The diplomatic hall of the Aurelian Empire was built to intimidate. Its ceiling curved so high it vanished into shadow, layered with slow-moving lights that shifted colors like distant stars. The walls were grown, not built, smooth and pale, etched with symbols older than humanity's written history. Every sound echoed just enough to remind visitors how small they were. Ethan Hale stood at the center of it. He wore a simple dark uniform, no weapons, no decorations beyond a small earth emblem on his chest. Compared to the towering alien nobles seated in floating tiers above him, he looked fragile, human, temporary. That was fine. He had learned that appearances mattered more to aliens than truth. The meeting had been routine. Trade routes, shared research, cultural misunderstandings smoothed over with careful words and polite pauses. Humanity's first long-term diplomatic mission was considered a miracle simply because it hadn't failed yet. Ethan was already planning his report back to Earth when the temperature of the room shifted. Not physically. Emotionally. Princess Serelith rose from her seat. She was tall, even by her people's standards, her skin shimmering with faint bioluminescent patterns that reflected her emotional state. Normally, they glowed in calm blues and silvers. Now they pulsed with bright, excited gold. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Royal announcements were rare. Personal ones were almost unheard of. Ethan turned toward her, curiosity stirring into concern. He had worked closely with the princess for over a year. She was intelligent, curious, and surprisingly informal for someone raised to rule an interstellar empire. She was also smiling far too widely. "My honored council," Serelith said, her voice clear and musical, amplified naturally by the hall itself, "and our human guests." She paused, eyes locking onto Ethan. "I bring joyous news." The lights overhead shifted brighter. The council leaned forward. Records began automatically activating, ancient systems responding to the change in atmosphere. Ethan's stomach tightened. Nothing good ever began with ancient systems waking up. Serelith took a breath that looked unnecessary, but very deliberate.
"I am pregnant." The hall went silent.
Not the polite kind, the kind that swallowed sound.
Ethan felt the words hit him a full second later. Pregnant.
He blinked once, then again. That wasn't possible. Cross-species reproduction had been discussed endlessly during early diplomatic talks. Genetic incompatibility, evolutionary distance, complete biological impossibility. It was one of the few universal constants across known intelligent life. The silence shattered. Voices erupted. Alien nobles shouted in languages Ethan's translator struggled to keep up with. Colors flared across their skins. Fear, shock, anger, disbelief. Several council members stood. Others backed away as if Serelith had become dangerous. Ethan didn't move. Serelith raised a hand, and the hall responded instantly. Ancient authority coded into the walls themselves. The noise faded. Her gaze never left Ethan. "You had mate with me," she said, her tone not accusing but thrilled, almost laughing. "And I am pregnant." Every eye in the hall snapped toward him. Ethan felt 100 instincts scream at once. Denial and denial. Panic, logic, survival. But he did not lie. "Yes," he said slowly. "We bonded with consent. Under your customs as they were explained to me." That caused another wave of reaction. Bonding ceremonies among the Aurelians were symbolic, emotional, not biological. At least, they were supposed to be. Medical drones detached from the ceiling without being commanded. "This violates sacred law," one council elder said, his skin flashing warning red. "It violates biology itself. It violates nothing," Serelith replied calmly. "The child exists." The drones scanned her, Data streamed across the hall in glowing symbols. Confirmation followed. Pregnancy. Detected. Stable. Developing. The impossible was no longer theoretical. Ethan finally felt fear, not for himself, for what this meant. Humans had always been the strange ones, physically weaker than many species, shorter-lived, lacking natural weapons, but adaptable, social, stubborn in ways that confused older civilizations. This would not be seen as romance. This would be seen as contamination. "Human," another noble said, voice cold.
"Explain." Ethan straightened. "We did not plan this," he said.
"We were told it was impossible. There was no experiment, no intent to create a child." Seralith nodded eagerly. "It is true. I was simply curious. Humans bond deeply, emotionally. I wished to understand." Her lights pulsed warmly. "I did not expect joy to follow. That word unsettled the council more than anything else. Joy had no place in interstellar law." Ancient archives activated fully now. Symbols etched into the walls began to glow, responding to Seralith's condition. Some of them had not been active in thousands of years. The oldest council member stared at them, horror creeping into his posture. "These systems only respond to one thing," he whispered.
Ooh.
Legacy. Ethan noticed something else. The systems were aligning toward him, not the princess. A thin beam of light brushed his chest emblem, scanning, analyzing. Ethan fought the urge to step back. "What is happening?" he asked quietly. No one answered him. Medical data continued to scroll. The unborn child showed no signs of rejection, no instability. In fact, it was adapting faster than any known life form. It was harmonizing. "This cannot be allowed," a military representative finally said.
"If humans can reproduce with us, they cannot," Seralith interrupted. "This is not conquest.
This is connection.
The word landed hard. Connection was dangerous. Ethan felt the weight of history pressing in. Humanity had entered the galaxy carefully, peacefully, trying not to alarm older powers. They had promised restraint, respect. Now a single unborn child threatened to rewrite everything. "Princess," Ethan said gently. "Do you understand what this will cause?" She turned to him, expression softening. "Yes," she said. "Change. That was when the council voted to suspend the session." Security fields shimmered into place, not around Ethan. Around Seralith. Protective. Containing. Uncertain which. She did not resist. As guards escorted her away, she reached out, touching Ethan's hand briefly. "Our child is safe with you," she said with complete confidence. "I know this." Ethan watched her go, heart pounding. He had come to the stars as a diplomat. Now he stood at the center of something ancient, impossible, and terrifyingly hopeful. And somewhere deep within alien systems, older than war itself, humanity had just been noticed. The human quarters inside the Aurelian capital were quiet, almost too quiet. The walls adjusted light and temperature perfectly. But they could not calm his thoughts. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment Seralith's hand touched his. "Our child is safe with you." He did not feel safe. By morning, the news had spread across the station. Not officially. Official channels were still silent. But whispers moved faster than law. Servants avoided eye contact. Guards watched him more closely. Drones hovered longer than necessary. Human command finally responded. The call came through as a secure projection, faces appearing one by one above the table. Diplomats, scientists, military observers. No smiles. "You confirmed the pregnancy?" Director Ramos asked.
"Yes," Ethan said. "Multiple scans."
"Stable. developing faster than expected. Silence followed. "That violates known biology," someone muttered. "So does most of what happens once humans get involved." Ramos replied dryly.
Are you in danger? Ethan considered lying. He didn't.
"Not yet. That worried them more than panic would have. The Aurelian Council has authority over the princess," Ramos said, "but not over you. If they decide this is a threat, they will," Ethan said. Ramos nodded. "Then your priority is the child. If they attempt seizure, extraction protocols activate." Ethan clenched his jaw. "She won't agree to that." "She doesn't have to," another voice said. "The child might." The call ended with no comfort. Hours later, Ethan was summoned. The chamber this time was smaller, older. No decorative lights, no soft curves. The walls were dark stone, etched with warning symbols rather than history. This was not a place for diplomacy. This was where decisions were enforced. Sarleth stood in the center, unrestrained, but guarded. Her glow was dimmer now, flickering between calm and concern. She smiled when she saw Ethan. The council did not. "You will explain," the elder said, "why our deepest systems recognize a human presence." Ethan stepped forward, slowly.
I don't know, he said. But humans evolved to adapt.
"We don't dominate environments. We survive them." The elder studied him. "Your species bonds intensely, emotionally."
Socially, your offspring require long care.
Yes. Most species outgrow parental need quickly, the elder said. Yours do not. No. Saralith turned, eyes bright.
"That is why this works." The council ignored her. "Our ancestors tried forced harmony," the elder continued.
They failed, nearly ended themselves.
"What assurance do we have that this is different?" Ethan met his gaze. "Because we didn't force it." That answer unsettled them. Medical specialists were brought in next, alien and human together. Uneasy, but curious, scans showed more impossible data. The unborn child was not rejecting either biology. It was stabilizing both, creating bridges where none should exist. "This is not dominance," one scientist whispered. "It is mediation." A word passed quietly through the room. Mediator. That was dangerous. Extremist factions emerged within days. Some demanded isolation. Others demanded termination of the pregnancy. A few demanded Ethan's detention for study. The princess refused all of it. She invoked royal protection laws that had not been used in centuries. Laws meant for heirs. Laws meant to preserve bloodlines. The irony was not lost on anyone. Ethan spent more time with her now, under observation. They spoke carefully, knowing every word was recorded. "Do you regret it?" he asked her once, quietly. Saralith tilted her head. "Regret? Curiosity? Never." "Regret trust? No." She placed a hand over her abdomen. "This child feels calm." That frightened Ethan more than panic would have. The galaxy did not respond calmly to change. The first attempt came without warning. A medical transport diverted course mid-flight. Its authorization codes were ancient, buried deep in Imperial archives. Someone had planned this long ago, waiting for the right excuse. Security alarms flared. Human and alien guards reacted together, weapons raised but uncertain who to aim at. Ethan moved without thinking. He stood between Saralith and the approaching operatives. "You will not take her," he said. They hesitated. Humans were still considered weak, but something in his stance made them pause. Saralith's glow brightened suddenly. The child reacted. Systems flickered. Gravity shifted slightly. just enough to throw the attackers off balance. The transport shut down completely. Ancient failsafes engaging. Silence returned. Everyone stared at Sereleth, at Ethan, at what stood between them. The council reconvened that same hour.
"This can no longer be hidden," the elder said. "The galaxy will learn of this." "Yes," Serelith agreed.
"And they will learn who protected me." Eyes turned to Ethan again. Humans had not fired a shot.
Had not threatened war, had simply refused to step aside. The council made a decision they had avoided for generations. They declared the child protected under interstellar legacy law. That law applied only to beings considered vital to galactic stability. Ethan felt the weight of it settle on his chest. This was no longer a private matter. This was history forming. That night, as he stood alone watching the city lights below, Ethan realized something important. Humanity had entered the stars, hoping not to be noticed. Instead, they had been understood. And that, he suspected, was far more dangerous. The declaration changed everything. Once the council announced that the unborn child was protected under interstellar legacy law, the Aurelian capital shifted in tone. The city did not panic, but it watched. Ships slowed their traffic. Communication channels flooded with requests, warnings, and demands from other civilizations. The galaxy was paying attention now. Ethan felt it in the way guards stood straighter when he passed, in the way officials measured every word around him. He was no longer just a human diplomat. He was connected to something the galaxy did not understand and could not ignore. Serelith remained calm. She spent long hours in the gardens grown along the palace exterior, surrounded by living structures that responded gently to her presence. Ethan often walked beside her, careful to keep his posture relaxed even when he knew eyes followed them.
"The council fears what they cannot control," she said once, watching the distant traffic lanes.
"They fear this child because it was not designed."
"Humans fear that too," Ethan replied. "We just learned to live with it."
Medical updates arrived daily. The child's development continued to defy expectation.
Neural growth patterns shifted in response to emotional input. When Serelith was stressed, the child stabilized her vitals. When Ethan was present, development accelerated slightly, as if recognizing familiarity. Human scientists struggled to explain it. Alien scientists stopped trying. "They are adapting to us," one finally admitted, not the other way around. That truth unsettled empires. Within a week, the first delegation arrived from a neighboring alliance. Tall, rigid beings whose civilization valued predictability above all else. Their message was polite. Their meaning was not. "This child represents imbalance," their envoy said. "Human emotional influence spreads chaos." Ethan listened without interrupting. Serelith responded before he could.
"Chaos," she said gently, "is simply change viewed from fear." The envoy left unsatisfied. Others followed.
Some curious, some hostile, some desperate. Rumors spread quickly that humans could bond beyond biology, that they could create unity where ancient species had failed, that their weakness was a lie. Extremist groups began organizing in secret. Human intelligence detected unusual movement, funding transfers, old weapons being activated, the same pattern humanity had seen countless times in its own history. Fear always found allies. Ethan was summoned again, this time not by the Aurelian Council, but by a joint emergency session. Representatives from multiple species appeared as shimmering projections. No one pretended this was about trade anymore.
"We request access to the child for study," one demanded. "We demand relocation of the human," another said.
"Sever the influence." Ethan felt anger rise, sharp and clear. "You talk about the child as if they are an object," he said.
Humans don't do that.
That is precisely the problem, someone replied.
Saralife placed a hand on her abdomen, her glow brightening protectively. My child will not be dissected by fear, she said. Nor will their father be removed. The word father carried weight. Several delegates reacted strongly. Some recoiled. Others leaned forward, interest replacing fear. Human law activated quietly in the background. Legal teams prepared arguments. Not threats, not fleets. Arguments. When extremist violence finally came, it came fast. A transport hub exploded on the outer ring of the capital. No casualties, but the message was clear. Panic rippled through civilian districts. Security forces mobilized. Ethan was with Saralith when the alarm sounded. She stiffened, eyes wide. The child reacted instantly. Systems throughout the palace stabilized instead of shutting down. Power fluctuations smoothed. Panic dampened. It's helping, Ethan whispered. Saralith nodded. It doesn't understand fear yet. That night, an attempt was made on Ethan's life. The assassin was not alien. He was human. A radical group believed humanity's survival depended on remaining separate. That emotional bonds across species would erase what made humans unique. They believed Ethan had betrayed his kind. The attack failed, not because of guards, because Ethan refused to run. He stood his ground, speaking calmly, steadily, reminding the attacker of shared history, shared pain, shared hope, long enough for security to intervene. The footage spread. A human, unarmed, facing death, choosing words instead of violence. The galaxy watched. Public opinion shifted. Not everywhere, not fully, but enough. The council met again, this time with urgency. Extremist forces are mobilizing, the elder said, both alien and human. Ethan nodded. Then it's time we stop pretending this is a problem to hide.
Saralith turned to him.
You would reveal everything? Yes, he said. Truth scares people, but lies scare them more. The broadcast reached farther than anyone expected. Saralith spoke openly, about curiosity, about trust, about the child not as a symbol, but as a life. Ethan spoke about humanity's history, their mistakes, their wars, their slow learning that survival meant cooperation, not isolation. The response was overwhelming. Messages flooded in, some hateful, many fearful. But more than expected were hopeful. Other hybrid experiments were revealed, failed ones, hidden ones, children who never should have been alone. The galaxy had been lying to itself for a long time. Late that night, Saralith sat quietly, breathing slower than usual. The child is preparing, she said. Ethan felt a chill. Preparing for what? Birth, she replied softly, earlier than expected. Medical teams rushed in, systems recalibrated. Emergency protocols activated. Outside, extremist fleets moved closer. Inside, humanity drew a line. Not with weapons, with presence. Human ships repositioned defensively, broadcasting humanitarian protection codes. Medical teams stood ready. Diplomats refused evacuation.
We do not abandon family, Ramos transmitted. Ethan stayed with Saralith as the first true pain began.
She squeezed his hand, not in fear, but trust. Whatever came next would change the galaxy forever, and humanity would be standing right there when it did. Light stayed bright across the living city, responding to rising stress levels among its people. Traffic lanes glowed steady blue as security systems shifted into protective formation. Above the planet, ships gathered like silent witnesses. Some loyal, some uncertain, some waiting for an excuse. Inside the palace, everything moved fast and slow at the same time. Medical teams surrounded Saralith, their movements careful and respectful. No one touched her without permission. No one raised their voice. The unborn child reacted strongly to emotion, and everyone had learned that lesson well. Ethan stood close, never in the way, but never far. Now Asai's breathing grew uneven, not from fear, but from effort. Her body was doing something it had never been meant to do, not alone. The child is stabilizing pain responses, one healer whispered in awe, sharing the burden. Ethan felt a knot tighten in his chest.
Ah!
Outside the medical chamber, the council argued. They will attack, one representative insisted.
We must move her and confirm their fear, another replied. That we hide what we do not understand? Human command stayed silent, listening.
Finally, Ethan spoke. She stays, he said calmly. Running makes this a target. Standing makes it a boundary. Some council members bristled at the human's confidence. Others remembered the transport incident, the explosion that didn't spread panic. The systems that calmed instead of failed, they agreed. Not because Ethan was human. The extremist fleet moved into orbit an hour later. They broadcast demands. Control of the child. Detention of Ethan. Transfer of all related data. The message repeated in multiple languages. The reply came from Sarilith herself. My child will not be surrendered, she said, voice steady despite the pain. This world is under my protection. The extremists laughed. They fired warning shots into empty space. Human ships did not respond. They repositioned, blocking lines of approach. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Just present. This is not a battle, Ramos transmitted. This is a refusal. The first breach attempt came through cyber systems, ancient codes meant to override royal authority. They failed. The child reacted again. Systems synchronized instead of collapsing. Power grids aligned. Defense networks responded with perfect efficiency, as if guided by a single calm mind. The extremists panicked. Fear led to mistakes. A boarding party attempted direct entry. They never reached the palace. Not because they were destroyed, because their ships shut down, every one of them. Medical alarms spiked inside the chamber. Sarilith cried out, gripping Ethan's arm. Not in fear, in effort. It's happening, she said. Now. The healers moved instantly. Ethan stayed. No one asked him to leave. The galaxy held its breath. As the birth progressed, something strange happened. Across the city, violence decreased, riots stalled, panic slowed. Even among extremist ships, communication faltered, as crews reported calm spreading without explanation. The child was not commanding. It was soothing. Ethan felt it too. A quiet certainty beneath the fear. A sense that this moment mattered more than any threat outside. You're doing great, he told Sarilith softly. She smiled through the pain. So are you. Outside the palace, the council watched the data streams change in real time. Ancient systems activated fully now, revealing records long hidden, not warnings. Confessions. The ancestors had tried to force unity by control, by domination, by erasing difference. They failed. This child was doing the opposite. Not erasing difference, connecting it. The extremist leader finally understood. If this completes, he transmitted in panic, we lose relevance. That was the truth they feared most. The final assault order was given, and then stopped. Human ships moved in closer, broadcasting a single message across all channels. We do not fight births, Ethan said, his voice recorded earlier, now playing galaxy-wide. We protect them. The words spread faster than weapons. Several extremist ships powered down voluntarily. Others retreated. A few tried to flee and found their systems gently but firmly disabled. Inside the chamber, a new sound filled the air. Life. The child was born surrounded by light, not violent or blinding, but warm and steady. Systems across the palace synchronized perfectly, as if welcoming something long expected. The healers stared in silent wonder. The child did not cry. They looked around, eyes open, calm, aware. Serelith reached out, holding them close. Ethan felt tears he did not try to hide. Outside, the galaxy felt it. Ancient technology settled into stable patterns. Long-standing conflicts paused mid-action. Fear did not vanish, but it softened. The council members lowered themselves, humbled. "This changes everything," the elder said quietly. "Yes," Ethan replied. "That's the point." The child rested peacefully between human and alien arms, not a weapon, not a ruler. A bridge, and the galaxy, whether it liked it or not, had just crossed a line it could never return from. The galaxy did not return to normal. It adjusted. In the days after the child's birth, reports flooded every network, not of destruction, not of conquest, but of systems stabilizing where chaos had once been constant. Border conflicts paused without explanation. Failing power grids synchronized. Long-broken communication relays came back online, as if reminded how to work together. No single government could explain it. They all felt it. Inside the Aurelian Palace, the air was quiet in a way Ethan had never experienced. Not tense silence. Peaceful silence, the kind that came after storms ended. Serelith rested on a living platform, her glow soft and steady. The healers confirmed what everyone could already see. She was recovering faster than any previous royal birth in recorded history. The child slept between her and Ethan. Small, fragile, ordinary, and somehow not. The council entered slowly, without ceremony. No grand announcements, no formal robes, just beings who understood that history did not always arrive with thunder. The elder bowed. It was not required. It mattered. "We were wrong," he said, "about many things." Ethan nodded once. "Humans usually are too. We just try to admit it faster." A few council members gave small, uncertain smiles. The child stirred, eyes opening briefly, not searching, not afraid, simply observing. Several council members felt their emotional patterns shift, smoothing, instinctively. No one spoke for a long moment. "What are they?" one finally asked. Serelith answered before Ethan could. "They are my child," she said calmly. "And is that settled? More than..." The extremist fleets withdrew fully within the week, not because they were defeated, but because their purpose collapsed. They had built their power on fear, and fear no longer spread the way it once did. Some leaders resigned, others vanished quietly. A few attempted to reorganize, and found no one willing to follow. Human Command received hundreds of messages, requests for mediation, not intervention. Mediation. It stunned even them. Ethan stood before the joint assembly, one final time before returning to Earth. The chamber was full in a way it had never been before. Species that had never shared space now stood side by side, uneasy but present. He did not prepare a long speech. He told a story. He spoke about early humanity, about borders drawn in blood, about mistakes repeated until lessons stuck, about how humans learned slowly and painfully that survival was not about being the strongest in the room. It was about who stayed when things became difficult. "We don't have perfect answers," Ethan said. "We just refuse to abandon people when the questions get hard." The child stirred again, sensing the emotional shift. The chamber calmed, not by force, but by shared attention.
This child doesn't make us special, Ethan continued. They just remind us of what we already were capable of.
The assembly did not cheer. They agreed. Agreements followed quickly. Not sweeping reforms. Small changes, shared research, hybrid ethics councils, new definitions of family under interstellar law. Words humanity had insisted on quietly for decades were finally written into galactic doctrine. Serelith watched from the gardens later that day, the city alive beneath her feet. Ethan stood beside her, knowing this moment would not last. "You will return to your world," she said. "Yes. You will come back. Yes." She smiled, not sadly. "The child will travel between stars," she said. "They will learn many ways of being." Ethan looked down at their child, who reached up clumsily, fingers closing around his. He felt the familiar human ache of love mixed with responsibility. "Whatever they choose," he said, "we'll support them." That was the most human promise he could make. Earth reacted in its own way. Some feared, some celebrated, some argued endlessly. That was expected. But when the footage spread of Ethan standing unarmed before an assassin, of human ships refusing to fire, of a birth halting a war without a single shot, something shifted. Humanity stopped apologizing for existing. They did not boast. They did not threaten. They simply stood a little straighter. The child grew quickly, not in size, but in awareness. They responded to emotion more than sound. When distressed beings were nearby, the child settled them without effort. Not control. Resonance. Scientists struggled to define it. Parents did not. They called it empathy. Years later, historians would argue about when the galaxy truly changed. Some would say it was the moment the child was born. Others would say it was the moment humanity refused to step aside. Ethan believed it was simpler. It was the moment everyone realized strength did not have to look like domination. On his last night before departure, Ethan stood on the balcony alone. Stars stretched endlessly before him. Serelith joined him quietly, holding their child. "Do you regret it?" she asked, echoing his old question. He smiled. "Never." She leaned against him, watching distant ships move in calm patterns. "The galaxy will struggle," she said. "Change is slow. Humans know," Ethan replied. "We're very patient when it matters." Below them, a city that once feared the future now planned for it. Above them, stars that once felt unreachable now felt like home. Between them slept a child who was neither weapon nor ruler, neither solution nor problem. Just proof that humanity's greatest power had never been technology or strength or conquest. It had always been this. When faced with the unknown, humans chose to stay, and the universe, at long last, stayed with them.